and it says your name is Phil Windley. Now, that may not be very exciting if you don't understand what's happening behind the scenes, but that's actually happening because of a submit event to the server. So let me show you that rule set so you can see what's going on. Hopefully we have time to wait for this. So this rule set has two rules. The first rule, well, notice first of all that I define something called my form, okay, which is just the form. And then I have a notification box which places that form on the page. So that's what actually placed this box on the page, was that notify action right here. Ignore that emit block for a minute. I'll tell you what that is in a second. The second rule says, notice it doesn't say select when page view, it says select when submit. So that's what's actually responding to that submission. It's grabbing the parameters out of the form and saying your name is first last, Phil Windley in my case, and appending that to my data, which is this little unordered list that we created up there. So this rule set is actually what's driving that form. And so that simple little form where we put in something and it gets put back on the form is created with just a few lines of KRL, and the control flow is happening through these event expressions like this select when right here. Now, I told you I would tell you what this little ugly block of JavaScript is here that we're emitting. I should tell you that good domain-specific languages always have a way of popping out into the underlying system to do things that the creators have not gotten around to yet. And so you can emit any JavaScript you want, right? So we don't encourage that because we would like to know where you're having problems and enhance the language to do it. But if you need to, you can. What this is doing is it's actually the JavaScript that will eventually be incorporated into the runtime to make all this happen automatically. So after we release the runtime that supports submit, this will go away. You won't have to have the submit because it'll already be in the runtime, which makes all of this work. So in that case, this rule set would essentially just be these two rules. A simple thing which puts up the form in the notify box, and something which responds to the submit event on that form. So, we can put other things here, and it will keep working because it doesn't care how many times you do that. It'll just keep responding to that submit event and make it work. So that's the demo that nobody's seen yet. We now have Mr. Michael Grace dialogue. Okay. So there's just one more thing that I wanted to talk about briefly, and that is this concept. So if you're a programmer, you've heard of these concepts of early and late binding, right? Some languages are thought of as early binding languages, and other languages are thought of as late binding languages. What we mean by that is, when do values actually get bound to variables, right? In languages like C and Java, variables get bound very early. They get bound at compile time. Whereas in other languages, particularly things like Ruby and other what are called dynamic languages, the binding happens later. It often happens at runtime, which adds a lot of flexibility. Now, I could go on for a while about late binding and early binding, and if you're really familiar with the concepts, you're probably saying, yeah, but Java has some late binding because all object-oriented languages have to have some, and that's all true. But the concept is, right, this idea of when do you bind things. And I think that this is appropriate when we think about binding on the web as well. That the later that we bind data sources and run apps, the more capable those apps can be in terms of responding to what the user cares about, helping the user achieve their purpose. Right? In the case of the specific example I'm thinking about, I won't mention names, but imagine a company that wants to integrate a lot of data sources into their website. What do? Well, they get their programming team together, they have some big plans, they figure it all out, they spend whatever time it takes, 2 weeks, a month, 6 months, kind of depends on, who they are and what language they're using probably. And eventually they have this big fanfare and they release the website, and then their users say, oh yeah, but wouldn't it be better if you had used LinkedIn here instead of something else, or if I had LinkedIn available? And they go, okay, well, we'll put that in the next release. That's early binding, right? That's early binding in terms of building websites, right? We're deciding up front what the users think they need, and then we're going to a lot of effort to do it, and finally we're popping something out and say, is this what you want? Okay. So if you think about the concept, the metaphor really at this point of late binding, Kynetx allows you to do all of that at the very last minute. So when the user gets the page in their browser, you're going to change it. Which means that I can give you LinkedIn and somebody else Facebook on that link just because that's what you care about and Facebook is what they care about. Right? I don't have to build that all into my website. I can do that integration on the client. And so we like this metaphor of early and late binding for data integration in websites. And I wanted to make sure that that concept got brought up because I'm sure that some other people will want to talk about it. So if you have not yet registered, make sure that you go and get a developer account. Just there's a link off Kynetx.com. Everybody here, if you don't have a developer account, you should get one just because it will make Stevie feel better when he looks at the numbers at the end of the week. If nothing else, do it for Stevie. Okay. And then finally, here's me. I'm PJW at Kynetx.com. Feel free to send me email. As Kristen mentioned, I blog at Windley.com, and on Twitter, I'm at Windley. Feel free to follow me. Do we have time for questions? Yeah. There we go. Questions? Do we have a mic? Where are the mics? Bradford, run a mic down here. To Dennis.
Phil, when you were talking about the different APIs that the Kynetx rules are working with, you mentioned Amazon and Microsoft. Do they realize what we're doing with the information?
Yeah, they do. In every case but Microsoft, we've actually had discussions with them about these things. And it's not that we didn't talk to Microsoft because we didn't want to. We just threw it in there, right, at the last minute. I said, Horsty, John's coming. We have to have OData. And so... And so, yeah, we've been talking to them, and in Amazon's case, Jeff Barr, for example, their evangelist, thinks it's pretty exciting. We do too. Other questions? Mike, right there.
So when are we going to have access to the new development environment, and as well as documentation for the new API integration for Google, et cetera?
As far as the new development environment, Wade, are you here? No, he's not here. We'll be rolling that out to appbuilder.kynetx.com soon, like probably right after the conference. I don't know if we'll do it during the conference. But if you want to use it, you can use it at appbuilder-staging. The only caveat I would give you is that if you edit a rule set in the new app builder, you can no longer go back to the old app builder and edit it. And that's because of this thing I talked about. It's using the new API. So it does not have its own copy of the rules in a database somewhere. It has to use them in the repository. And the old app builder doesn't do that, and so it's out of sync. So if you want to use the new app builder, you can right now. Just attach dash staging after our app builder. Just remember that if you edit something, you may not, you won't be able to edit in the old one, so you may just want to play with it with creating new rule sets and things like that. As far as documentation goes, Mark. Okay, Sam.
That will be released. The Ruby Gem has RDoc, and then so you'll be able to jump in and use it immediately. As far as style of the API, you will need to be able to make OAuth authenticated GET requests and POST requests. It's REST-ish in design and OAuth protected.
Another question? One back there. Can you run the mic back there? Or we had one down here. Okay.